My boyfriend of 7 years said that he didn't love me anymore, so I resolutely broke up with him. Everyone thought that I would cry and turn back to beg for getting back together. Later, it was he who had red eyes and begged for getting back together. 01 I broke up with Jason. In fact, there had been signs long ago that there were problems in our relationship. He gradually started not answering phone calls in front of me. Instead, he would get up, go to the balcony and close the door. He began to often use working overtime as an excuse and stopped accompanying me for dinner. He also started subtly rejecting my closeness. Most importantly, when I brought up the topic of marriage with him, unlike before when he was full of enthusiasm, he began to choose to avoid answering. I thought it was just a period of emotional tiredness and it would get better after a while, until I received a wrongly sent message on my mobile phone. I don't seem to love Wendy anymore. Being together for too long, I'm really getting tired of it. I want to break up with her. However, the message was withdrawn in less than 5 seconds. He probably realized that he had sent it to the wrong person. But I couldn't pretend that I hadn't seen it. At that moment, I suddenly understood a lot of things. All his past behaviors became clear in an instant. He didn't love me anymore. And I accepted this fact in a very short time. Then I sent him a message, "Jason, let's break up." As soon as I sent it, he called me. Without even looking at it, I hung up directly and then turned off my phone. If it had been in the past, I would have patiently listened to his explanation. Even if I was angry, I would still forgive him. But this time it was different. I was sober. Whatever he said didn't matter to me anymore. 02 I quickly packed my luggage and only took my original things. I moved to a small house on the same day. This house was bought by me. When we just graduated from university, Jason and I each participated in a quite big project and got a considerable commission. At that time, both of us were striving for our common future. A house and a car were what we needed for getting married. Finally, we decided that I would buy a house and he would buy a car. I remembered that it was winter when we picked up the car. It was a Christmas Eve with light rain. The streets were filled with red and green lights. The house was successfully transferred on the same day. I sat in the passenger seat, holding the property ownership certificate and kept flipping through it. Jason smiled gently and took out one hand to hold mine. He said, "Wendy, we have a home now." I looked at the lights outside the car window and thought that there would also be a light on for me in the late nights in the future. So I reached out and intertwined my fingers with his. Yes, we had a home. I reached out and touched the car seat in front of me, with a bit of childish dominance. "This seat is mine. No one else is allowed to sit here." He smiled again. Okay. In the future, my passenger seat will only belong to you and this little red book will change from a property ownership certificate to a marriage certificate." He also said, "I will always love you." His eyes were full of sincerity. Later, we pasted wallpaper on the not-so-big house and hung our photos on the wall. On the small balcony, we raised the rose seedlings that he had bought for me after traveling dozens of kilometers. The bed sheet was chosen by him and it was my favorite color. But how long is 7 years? I asked myself. I didn't find the answer. I just didn't know when I started crying. Suddenly, I found that the wallpaper in the room had turned yellow and peeled off. The balcony was empty, and the bed sheet in the wardrobe was also covered with mold spots. The car in my memory had already been eliminated because it was too old. The house had also been vacant for a long time because it was too small. Just like my relationship with Jason, because of the long time, it had also disappeared. 03 When I opened my eyes again, it was already noon the next day. I was woken up by Nancy's phone call. "Do you know what that bastard said? I'm so angry." Nancy's always loud voice made me involuntarily hold the phone a little farther away. Then I remembered that I had told her about my breakup yesterday. With her personality, she probably went to Jason to ask for an explanation. Then she sent me the chat record between her and Jason. Jason said, "I'm tired of it. I'm just fed up with her. I'm tired of her nagging, tired of her still making me listen to her chatter about trifles when I'm exhausted after work every day, tired of her forcing me to say good morning and good night every day, and her inexplicable tantrums. I don't want to coax her. I'm really tired. Nancy got angry and questioned him. Why didn't you find her annoying when she accompanied you through hardships? When she lived in a small house with you, wrote plans for you, and didn't sleep for 2 or 3 days to take care of you when you were sick, why didn't you think she was annoying? Jason replied a few minutes later, who asked her to do these things? I thought I had completely given up hope. But when I saw this sentence, my heart still ached for no reason. Nobody asked me to do these things. It turned out that it was all my wishful thinking. But Jason seemed to have forgotten. He forgot that the things that annoyed him now were the ones he had coquettishly asked me to do before. When we just got together in university, Jason had a lot of professional courses. In order to be able to talk to me more during the break time, he would pester me to tell him everything that had happened to me that day. From the moment I opened my eyes and got up in the morning to the second before we met, every detail. He said, listening to you talk about these things makes me feel like I'm also involved in your life all the time. I'm very happy. He also said, I want to be the first person you say good morning to and the last person you say good night to every day. I can still remember how he was swallowing bread while listening to me carefully. 7 years is probably really a long time. It has covered the feelings that the boy who used to squeeze time to listen to me talk had for me with dust. He's not annoyed by these things, I smiled and said to Nancy. He's just tired of me. Actually, I should have broken up with Jason long ago. I was just deceiving myself. Last week, he came back drunk after saying that he had social engagements. When I helped him lie down on the bed, his mobile phone vibrated several times. I opened it and took a look. The name Nina jumped into my eyes. I knew her. She was Jason's childhood friend. She went abroad in high school and seemed to have come back recently. She said, "Thank you for accompanying me on my birthday. I'm very happy." I was stunned for a moment and couldn't help scrolling up the chat record. Since Nina came back to China, they had been chatting almost every day. But there didn't seem to be any improper words. She occasionally shared nice music with him, and Jason shared with her what he ate every day. They didn't seem to chat a lot. They would just take pictures of funny clouds and send them to each other or tell each other when they found cute kittens. From big events like attending meetings to small things like a button falling off a shirt, they talked about everything. There wasn't a single ambiguous word, but the atmosphere was full of ambiguity everywhere. If I weren't Jason's girlfriend, I would think that this young couple had a really good relationship. Looking at the chat record between me and Jason, what we talked about the most was whether we would work overtime tonight. However, his words and deeds were no different from usual. He would still worry about whether I was in good health and whether I was safe. But he didn't care whether I was in a good mood or whether there was a new boy around me, but I was still deceiving myself, thinking that it was just the 7-year itch and it would get better slowly. We had been together for so long. How could he just stop loving me all of a sudden? But he didn't give me the chance to continue deceiving myself. Those 2 sentences should have been sent to Nina. It seemed that he had complained about me to Nina more than once. But Nina would always cutely condemn him for not knowing how to cherish. She said that a girlfriend as good as Sister Wendy was hard to find even with a lantern, and he shouldn't be ungrateful. At the moment of breaking up, I didn't even know who to blame. Jason hadn't cheated on me or had an affair. He just didn't love me anymore and was just sharing life and chatting with a little sister. Nina didn't seem to be wrong either. She didn't deliberately have an ambiguous relationship with Jason. She was just sharing life and chatting with her brother who grew up with her. So should I blame myself? I couldn't figure it out, but I understand that the desire to share is the highest form of love. If he didn't love me, why should I hold on tightly? 04 I changed jobs and joined a newly established small studio. I studied fashion design in university, while Jason studied management. Before, because I had been accommodating Jason all the time, I would go to whichever company Jason went to. Now that we've broken up, it's better not to see each other since we might run into each other often. I found out about the studio accidentally in an alumni group. The founder was Ryan, a senior who was 2 years older than me. It seemed that he decided to come back to develop after going abroad for further studies for a few years. Ryan was the campus heartthrob in his grade back then. He was handsome, had a good personality, and excellent grades. I was lucky to follow him to do several design exhibitions. He was very patient with everyone's design drafts. No wonder he was so popular. Anyway, I learned a lot during the time when I followed him to do design work. At first, I just applied for the job with a try-it-out attitude. Unexpectedly, I was informed that I was accepted on the same afternoon. After all, among so many outstanding students back then, my grades were just so-so. What's more unexpected was that he still remembered me. The studio wasn't big. The moment he came in, he looked at me. He slightly curved his lips with a smile. "Long time no see, Wendy." I was stunned and asked, "Senior, do you still remember me?" He seemed to think of something interesting, and his eyes under the gold-rimmed glasses also curved with a smile. "It's hard to forget that set of pajamas." I was shocked. The long-buried memory suddenly came back to me. That day was the first meeting for the design exhibition. Besides freshmen and Ryan, several professors and teachers from the design department would also be invited. In short, it was an occasion where dressing up elaborately wouldn't be too much. But unfortunately, I had stayed up until after 3 o'clock in the morning the night before to finish more than 20 quick sketches for homework. The meeting started at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was undoubtedly late. Even though I wasn't fully awake, I still remembered that it was an important occasion, so I started putting on makeup with my eyes narrowed. I even put on small high heels. However, there was a slip in my meticulous preparation. I didn't comb my hair and didn't change my pajamas. So at 8:05, everyone saw a crazy woman in a pink Minnie Mouse furry pajamas with messy hair, but with delicate makeup, wearing small high heels and even wearing colored contact lenses. I remembered that Ryan also smiled like this that day, looking at me with his peach blossom eyes curved. "Wendy is really a unique talent. Your aesthetic is so refreshing and unconventional." Several teasing laughs came from the small meeting room. Although it wasn't ridicule, I was still too embarrassed to enter or leave the meeting room. My ears were blushing red with shame. At that moment, I finally understood why Nancy had repeatedly confirmed in surprise whether I really wanted to wear this before I went out. It was just that I hadn't woken up completely and felt comfortable in what I was wearing, so I didn't notice the problem at all. Ryan laughed as he did, but still got up and nodded to the teachers, saying, "Everyone, please wait a moment. I'll take her to change clothes." Even when I was following behind him, I could sense that he was trying hard not to laugh. "If you want to laugh, just laugh. Anyway, I've already made a fool of myself," I said somewhat resignedly. I had left such an impression on my classmates and teachers right at the beginning. I was afraid that I would be laughed at in the future. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. I, who was following closely behind him, almost bumped into his back. When he turned around, there was no smile on his face anymore. Instead, he looked serious. "Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at you. I just thought it was a bit cute. I'll apologize if you mind." His suddenly formal tone made me feel a bit at a loss. I touched my nose and said, "That's not what I meant either." After that, he took me to the clothing room and found a dress that was as ordinary as possible among a lot of designed gowns for me to change into. When I went back to the meeting room, I thought I would be made fun of and teased. Unexpectedly, everyone acted as if nothing had happened and the meeting started normally. Later, I learned from others that it was he who asked everyone not to mention it again, for fear that I would feel uncomfortable. I had mentioned this incident to Jason later. He also laughed and touched my head, saying that I was adorably muddle-headed. Why did I think of Jason again? I smiled helplessly and looked up at Ryan in front of me. "Thank you so much, Senior, for having such a good memory. Don't call me Senior after leaving school. Just call me Ryan." He turned around and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "To celebrate the new colleague joining us, we'll go for a dinner together tonight. It's on me." The studio immediately became lively. Although there were only a dozen people, it sounded like dozens of people cheering. "Great. Boss Ryan is so generous." In the evening, I drank a few more glasses on the pretext of toasting. I'm not a heavy drinker. But I had been really bothered recently and always felt that I needed to vent somewhere. By the end of the dinner, I was already 5 or 6 parts drunk. My steps were a bit unsteady. Accidentally, the heel of my shoe stepped on a small stone. But before I fell, I was supported by a pair of hands. It was Ryan. I whispered my thanks. There was a bit of pain in my ankle, but I could still walk. You don't seem happy, he said in a declarative sentence. Yes, I replied simply and directly. How could I be happy? The boyfriend I had been with for 7 years didn't love me anymore. He was annoyed by my chatter, annoyed that I forced him to say good morning and good night, yet he had a childhood friend with whom he chatted every day. Ryan didn't say anything and was looking for something in the distance. I laughed at myself for being really drunk and how I could even confide my feelings to my boss. I was about to turn around to take a taxi and go home when suddenly I saw a familiar figure. It's always the case that you can't meet the person you want to see, but you can run into them when you don't want to. I sighed, feeling even sadder. 05, across the road was Jason, with a cute and lovely girl beside him. If I guessed correctly, it should be Nina. This was a small square with many street vendors. Jason was buying candied haws for that girl. I used to love candied haws too. When I was in university, every early autumn, without me saying anything, Jason would first buy candied haws and wait for me downstairs in the dormitory. He would hold the candied haws in one hand and hot milk tea in the other, running towards me with bright eyes. If he saw that I was wearing too little, he would even scold me a few words. At that time, our relationship was envied by everyone. My roommates would always joke, "Did your little boyfriend bring you candied haws again?" Now, things had changed. He still bought a bunch of candied haws that looked delicious, but he didn't run towards me anymore. Instead, he handed them to the girl beside him, and the affectionate look in his eyes when he looked at Nina was something I had seen before. He used to look at me like that too. When I occasionally got confused and forgot things, occasionally got lost and couldn't find my way, or occasionally couldn't draw a design draft, he thought I was cute. Jason lowered his eyes and smiled, his eyes still bright. But the person in his eyes had been replaced by Nina. It was as if my feet were sealed and I couldn't move. My mood was in such a mess that it was like a tangled ball of hemp. Yet my consciousness was clearer than ever. I turned around to leave, but my hand was grabbed. A bunch of flowers appeared in front of me. They were roses. I looked at Ryan behind the flowers, a bit taken aback. Ryan was rarely a bit nervous, and the tips of his ears turned red. I heard that girls would be very happy when they receive flowers. He pushed the flowers towards me a little further. Don't be unhappy. You'll age faster if you keep frowning, Ryan smiled, his eyes and eyebrows curving. Senior Ryan, you're quite good at coaxing girls, I joked. He pushed his glasses and didn't answer, just smiled, thank you. I like them very much, I politely accepted the flowers. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Jason again. He saw me. As if to confirm my thought, the next second, he called me. Who are you with? He asked coldly and with a hint of interrogation. He stood there as if interrogating me, staring at me across the road. I turned my head and directly met his gaze. If I remember correctly, we've already broken up. He didn't say anything. Nina beside him looked at him and then at me. Cars were coming and going, and his figure appeared and disappeared in front of my eyes. Go and accompany your childhood friend. I was already bothered and didn't want to waste my breath. The alcohol seemed to have gone to my head and it hurt a bit. I rubbed my eyebrows. Have you been drinking? He almost immediately noticed that something was wrong with me. It had always been like this before. I would get a headache whenever I drank. So no matter at dinners or parties, there was always fruit juice or milk in my glass. No matter how many people came to persuade me to drink, he would always protect me behind him and block one glass of wine after another. I felt sorry for him drinking too much and tugged at his sleeve, whispering, I can drink a little. His face was red, but his eyes were clear, I can't bear to see you suffer. But the person who cared about me so much turned out to be tired of me. It has nothing to do with you. Let me take you home. There are painkillers in my car. I'll get you a hot towel when we get back. Jason. I couldn't bear it anymore and interrupted him. Stop pretending, okay? It was you who wanted to break up. I had always been so confident in our relationship. I had never thought that there would be any reason for us to break up. But indeed, I didn't expect that the reason would be so simple. It was just that he didn't love me anymore. He had transferred his affection and life to another person. I hung up the phone. Ryan handed me a tissue. I'm afraid you'll cry. I shook my head and smiled. I shouldn't cry. It's not worth it. He looked at me meaningfully and took back the tissue. Let me take you home. It's not safe for you to go home alone after drinking. I didn't decline and sat in the car, leaning against the window in a daze. The shops on both sides of the street were lit with colorful lights, but there would never be a light left for me anymore. 06 Since the studio was in its initial stage of establishment and had taken on a small design exhibition, it was extremely busy. We couldn't neglect any aspect, including publicity, design, and pattern making. During this period, Jason also showed up in front of me intentionally or unintentionally. He posted on moments about where he had eaten with whom yesterday and what he had done where today. Occasionally, I would receive anonymous packages and then he would come to ask if they were mine and if I needed him to bring them to me. After several times like this, I completely lost my patience and simply blocked his moments. I sent him the last message, whether they are mine or not, I don't want them. You deal with them. Then I never looked at his reply again and devoted myself wholeheartedly to work. During this period, I almost lived in the studio. But every time when I worked late into the night, Ryan would always wait until the last moment to send me home, under the pretext of ensuring the safety of the employees. Every morning there would be a breakfast on everyone's desk. I thought to myself, was the employee welfare here so good? Another senior told me that there hadn't been such a thing before. It seemed that it started only after I joined the company. I was suspicious but didn't have time to think too much about it. After working overtime and staying up late for more than a week, the exhibition ended successfully. And as expected, I fell ill with a high fever of 39 degrees Celsius. Nancy was called over by me in the middle of the night. While scolding me to take medicine, she was cooking porridge for me. I'm not that good at cooking. Just make do with it. She carefully brought me the lean meat porridge and didn't forget to scold me. In this cold and quiet small house, with her bustling around, it somehow felt warm. Nancy was browsing her mobile phone beside me when suddenly she clicked her tongue. I craned my neck to look. It was a New Moments post by Jason. The picture was a bowl of clear noodle soup. Underneath, some common friends were joking, "Did you make it for your sister-in-law again?" He replied that it wasn't. I remembered that Jason couldn't cook at all before. He couldn't even tell the difference between salt and sugar. It was later, after graduating from university, when I also had a high fever like tonight, that I couldn't buy warm food in the middle of the night, so he had to cook by himself. I fell asleep drowsily after taking the medicine until I was woken up by the clattering noise. Jason was watching a video tutorial while looking for the pot lid in a flurry. There were 2 band-aids wrapped around his fingertips. I walked over helplessly and took the spatula from his hand and quickly cooked the porridge. He stood behind me with a wronged look on his face. I asked him how he got his fingers hurt. He was too embarrassed to say that he was scratched by the spatula. I couldn't help laughing at how clumsy he was. How could anyone get scratched by a spatula? He scratched his head sheepishly and made up his mind to learn to cook well. However, he really didn't have the talent for cooking. After learning for several months, he could barely make a bowl of clear noodle soup with a fried egg. But even for me, I seldom ate the noodles he made. So for whom did he make this bowl of noodles tonight? Nina? Probably. I remembered from the chat record that day that she said she wanted to eat the noodles made by him. I held the porridge and took 2 big sips. Suddenly, my stomach felt warm but my eyes felt a bit sore. I asked Ryan for 2 days sick leave. He said that since it was his fault that an excellent employee was overworked, he should take good responsibility and directly gave me 3 days paid leave. I also didn't expect that Ryan would come to see me. After the high fever subsided, I still felt cold and wrapped myself up tightly. When I opened the door for Ryan, I was still wearing that pink Minnie Mouse pajamas. As soon as he saw it, he laughed. Wendy is so loyal to every piece of clothing. I was helpless and had to invite him in. Boss Ryan, how come you have time to visit me? Are you feeling better? Much better. I sniffed. There were still some remaining symptoms of a cold. I bought some ginger syrup and some fruit. On my way here, I passed by a flower shop and bought a bunch of flowers. There were no roses, so I bought sunflowers. I'll just put them here. Only then did I notice that he was carrying a lot of things in both hands. But I had felt strange last time. Not many people knew that I liked roses. How did he know? Last time when I saw you had a headache, I asked a friend to get some painkillers. These have fewer side effects, but you can't take too many. Pay more attention to rest usually. He started chatting on and on. But I always felt that something was a bit off. Boss Ryan, are you like this to every employee? I asked tentatively. No, he replied simply and directly, only to you. Now it was my turn to be stunned. He smiled again, but don't feel bothered. I'm just expressing my feelings. He wasn't wearing glasses today, and his eyes looked even clearer. There was firmness and concentration in his gaze when he looked at me. I felt at a loss and lowered my head, avoiding his gaze, and said jokingly, Boss Ryan is really good at joking. I'm not joking. I really like you, and I've liked you for a long time. 07 in the following days, I still went to work and got off work as usual. There was still a breakfast on my desk every day as usual, but this time no one else had one. He still waited for me to get off work every day and sent me home. It seemed that after the truth was revealed that day, he became more open and straightforward instead, and no longer used caring for employees as an excuse. However, I was a bit distracted and restless. The long 7-year relationship had just ended. At present, I didn't have the mood to fall in love with someone again. I could let go of Jason, but it was hard to let go of the memories of those 7 years. That innocent love that occupied my youth, I didn't know how long it would take to get over it. I deliberately kept my distance, but Ryan seemed to turn a blind eye to it. There's a party in the evening. Come with me, Ryan said in a low voice when he walked up behind me at some point. I subconsciously wanted to refuse, but he spoke before I did. There will be several teachers in the design field. I'll introduce them to you. After hesitating for a while, I still followed him. I couldn't give up the opportunity to learn more just because of personal matters. But what I didn't expect was that Jason was also there. Only then did I know that Jason was one of the investors in the last design exhibition. Since I replied to his message last time, it seemed that I hadn't been bothered by him anymore. He didn't look well and seemed to have lost weight. As soon as I pushed the door open and walked into the private room, he had been staring at me. Maybe he was looking at me, or maybe he was looking at Ryan. Anyway, he was giving off an unhappy vibe all over. And Ryan was just a bit stunned when he first entered the door, and then quickly adjusted his expression and introduced the teachers present to me as usual. Out of politeness, I should stand up and toast each of them one by one. Just as I was about to raise my red wine glass, I saw Jason fastening the buttons of his suit and getting ready to stand up. I knew him too well. His action clearly showed that he wanted to block the wine for me. I frowned slightly, hesitating about how to refuse him. One hand pressed down on my wine glass first and handed me a cup of tea. I looked up and it was Ryan again. He explained with a smile, girls can't drink alcohol, so I'll use tea instead of wine to toast you all. The several teachers didn't make it difficult for us and nodded amicably. They also didn't forget to tease, we've never seen you bring any girl to a dinner before. Do you have some ulterior motives, young man? Ryan smiled again. It's okay to make fun of me, but Wendy is shy. If you keep talking like this, she'll run away. The several teachers repeatedly said, ouch, you can't catch up with her and you're blaming us instead. Although these senior teachers were already over 50 years old, they were still full of energy when chatting. The party didn't end until midnight. Jason had a gloomy face throughout the whole process, except for drinking in silence. He didn't say another word. Finally, When it was over and before I could stand up, Jason stopped me. I have something to tell you. His eyes were full of drunkenness and his voice was a bit hoarse. I didn't want to get entangled. I have nothing to say to you, Wendy. He lowered his eyes again with a look of disappointment between his brows and whispered, talk to me. He knew that I was most vulnerable to this trick of his. In the past, whenever he made me angry, he would act like a puppy, burrowing into my arms, rubbing his head against my palm, and repeatedly saying in a coquettish way, Wendy, Wendy, pay attention to me. I'm wrong. Talk to me. I turned my head to look out of the window at the entrance of the restaurant. Ryan was still saying goodbye to the several teachers. I sat down again and sighed almost imperceptibly. Go ahead. Are you feeling better? I heard that you had a fever. Do you still have a headache? I bought the medicine you usually take. When you go home, can I give it to you? He almost had a begging tone. I didn't respond to him and just pressed my phone with my head down. He moved a bit closer to me. Wendy, don't be angry. I didn't really want to break up with you. I just didn't really want to break up with me, but were you really bothered by me? I raised my head and stared at him. That's not what I meant. Jason, I thought we would get married. We had been together since our sophomore year in university and it had been 7 years until now. We graduated together, bought a house and a car together, worked together, and lived together. I would save money for several months to buy that pair of basketball shoes he liked just to give him a birthday surprise. He would also take a bus for more than 10 hours to reach my hometown on New Year's Eve just because I said I wanted to celebrate the new year together, just to say Happy New Year to me. He remembered that I liked roses, and I remembered that he loved playing basketball. Our love had been going smoothly all the way. We just needed to keep going and we would have a happy ending. But he stopped, let go of my hand, and went to appreciate other flowers instead of roses. Suddenly, I didn't know whether I should blame him or not. He was just appreciating. He didn't touch or pick them. But that appreciation should have been unique and belonged to me. Along the way, weren't there boys around me? But no matter how many people showed their affection to me, I didn't pay any attention to them. I wouldn't share my daily menu with others, I wouldn't report my schedule to others, and I wouldn't stop to pick up a basketball on the roadside. I could forgive him for making me angry and for being late for dates. Even when he forgot Valentine's Day last year, I forgave him. But Jason, I called him again with disappointment in my eyes, you've fallen in love with other flowers. I won't contact her anymore. I won't look at anyone else. Let's make up, okay? Don't go with others. Let's go home. I made noodles for you. Have a taste. Jason seldom said something so humbly. He had always been proud and self-centered. When he thought I was annoying and had a bad temper, that was the real him. It was the first time that I found out that he was also hypocritical. In the past, I was probably blinded by love. I smiled sarcastically. Jason, don't pretend to be humble like this. It doesn't suit you. Ryan pushed the door open and came in at this time. It seemed that he sensed the stiff atmosphere in the private room. He rarely frowned. He came in, picked up my coat for me, nodded and signaled that it was time to go. I got up and walked out of the door. Then Jason's voice came again. It seemed that he said something to Ryan. I didn't hear clearly and turned around to ask. Ryan smiled and didn't answer me. It was not until I sat in the back seat of his car that he suddenly said, "Didn't you want to ask me last time why I liked you? Do you still remember that you saved a kitten when you were in university? It was mine." 08. It was a bit exaggerated to say that I saved it. I just gave that kitten a helping hand. It was near the end of the first semester of my freshman year, before I got together with Jason. One night, I suddenly felt hungry, so I went to the convenience store in my pajamas. But the rain in summer always comes suddenly. I just stepped out of the convenience store when it started to rain. At that time, I thought fortunately that I was used to carrying an umbrella with me, or I would miss the curfew of the dormitory. However, before I could open the umbrella, I heard a few weak meows coming from the corner beside me. I was curious because cats were not allowed in school. I walked closer to confirm and peeked to find a white ragdoll cat that was only a few months old lying limp on the ground, on the verge of death. The rain had soaked its fur, but it didn't have the strength to move. Ragdoll cats are usually precious and definitely not stray cats. I looked around several times but didn't find anyone. "Whose poor little thing are you? Did you get lost?" I said softly as I carefully picked it up and put it on the chair outside the convenience store. The little thing seemed to be shivering with cold, and its voice was also a bit shaky. I took off my pajama jacket and wrapped it around the cat, then went to the convenience store to buy some water and ham sausages and fed it a few bites. "I'm leaving, little one. Be well and wait for your owner to come and find you." I finally touched its head and it meowed a few times. "So what happened to the kitten later?" I asked him. "It died," he said, gripping the steering wheel. I saw in the rearview mirror that his eyes dimmed. I took it to the hospital immediately when I found it the next day, but it was too late. It had been sick for a long time and couldn't be cured. That night, it probably knew it was going to die, so it ran out. I guess it didn't want me to see it in that state. Sorry. Don't apologize. I should be the one thanking you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even have been able to see it for the last time." I lowered my head in silence and then suddenly thought of something. "Then how did you know it was mine?" "That pajamas." I was stunned. "The pajamas?" "There's a character, Wan, meaning evening in Chinese, on the hem of the pajamas, and there's also one on yours." Ryan was right. It was my little habit. I would sew a character, Wan, on the hem of my favorite clothes. It always felt so magical to meet you again later. You're just as cute and muddle-headed as I imagined, but also very kind and hardworking. Falling in love with you was something I expected. But before I could tell you, I heard that you had a boyfriend." After saying that, he looked up and glanced at me through the rearview mirror. I couldn't see the corners of his mouth but I guessed he was smiling. "You don't have to rush to reject me. Take your time to get over your 7 years. I've waited for 7 years already. I'm not in a hurry. I'll keep waiting for you." I didn't respond. I just turned my head to look at the dim streetlights outside the car window. "What did you and Jason just talk about?" I tried to change the topic. "He asked me to stay away from you." I helplessly put my hand on my forehead. He was still such a childish guy. I didn't agree. Ryan restrained his smile and was unusually serious for once. "Since he doesn't cherish you, I'll take his place." 09 Since coming back from that party that day, Jason had been waiting for me to get off work every day to take me home. Every now and then, he would bring me some small gifts, which might be flowers, small handmade pendants, or small pieces of jewelry. Even though I ignored him every time, he still asked me out for dinner every weekend. The things that he used to find annoying about me, he was now doing them all without missing a single one. He took the initiative to say good morning and good night to me, reported his schedule to me, and shared little things that happened during the day. I just found it funny. He was the one who said disdainfully before, "Who asked her to do these things?" And now he was the one who took the initiative to do them. The news of our breakup seemed to have reached my parents' ears. My parents took turns to persuade me that Nina was just a little sister and those words were just angry remarks of young people. My mother didn't understand. I had quarreled with Jason and even talked about breaking up before, so why couldn't we make up this time? So the situation clearly became that the three of them were on one side and I was on the other. But actually, Jason himself knew in his heart that this wasn't an ordinary quarrel. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put aside his pride that day and almost begged me to make up. He always knew what was on my mind, but he still did what he did. Whether he really still loved me or just didn't want to break up, he knew best. I still remember when he confessed his love to me in our sophomore year. I made a wish that I wanted to drink milk tea. He almost immediately ran out, ran across half of the campus to buy it, and then squatted downstairs in the dormitory waiting for me. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat and he was panting. I asked him why he ran instead of ordering takeout. He smiled stupidly and said that I liked to drink iced milk tea and takeout was too slow and it would melt by the time it was delivered. I laughed at how clumsy he was and asked him what his wish was. I could also help him fulfill it. Suddenly, he became serious. The tips of his ears turned red and he stammered and asked me if I could be with him. The sunlight was particularly dazzling that day, shining on his face with a halo. I nodded as if possessed by something, and our relationship began. After breaking up, it didn't seem real. The 7-year relationship could really end just like that. The bond between people is so fragile. How could it break so easily? But I didn't want to hold on to it anymore. So when Jason asked me out for dinner for the umpteenth time in that month, I agreed. It was obvious that he was very happy. He asked me if I wanted to go to the newly opened Thai restaurant. I was unusually calm and just randomly found a beef noodle shop and sat down. Amid the noisy crowd around, he looked at me a bit nervously. I asked him, on the night of New Year's Eve this year, after we quarreled, where did you go? He was stunned for a moment, as if he knew what I was going to say. We used to spend every New Year's Eve together, but that day he insisted on going to a drinking party. I was unhappy and lost my temper, but he didn't coax me and just slammed the door and left on his own. 2 hours later, he came back with a small cake and a bunch of baby's breath. I thought he had gone out to calm down and then came back. I was happy about it. After all, he couldn't bear to see me sad. But when I checked the chat record that day, I found that he had gone to see Nina. Both the baby's breath and the strawberry cake were what Nina liked. It was just that Nina happened to be on a business trip and wasn't there, so he went back home. Jason, don't come to see me anymore, I gave him an ultimatum. Let's leave each other some dignity. He still looked unwilling. So you've chosen Ryan, right? What's so good about him? I frowned. He was still throwing his tantrum until now. He was trying to use Ryan as an excuse to alleviate the guilty fact that he had changed his heart. I used to trust him too much, trust his love too much, so I couldn't see his true face at all. Suddenly, I felt that I had been blind and regarded him as my perfect lover. I don't love you anymore, Jason. Don't show up in front of me again. Whether I choose Ryan or not is my own business. We've broken up for a long time. As I was speaking, my voice choked up and my nose felt sore. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I always thought of myself as a calm and rational person. When I left, I was very decisive and quick. When I saw him again, I didn't feel the so-called heartache. Even when he showed up with Nina or begged me to get back together after a party, I never let him see my vulnerable side. But when I really cried and said that I didn't love him, I clearly knew how much I had loved him in the past. Did he also tell Nina the words that he once told me about being together forever? When he spent Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve with me, was he also thinking about his childhood friend at that time? The more I loved him in the past and the more reluctant I was to let go of these 7 years, the more I minded Nina's appearance, the more I minded his harsh words to me. I hadn't been ambiguous with others even after breaking up, and I hadn't said a bad word about him to anyone. Why couldn't he do the same when we were in a relationship? He quietly stopped walking forward with me, climbed over the railing to pick the flowers outside the yard. He even looked down on the roses that had accompanied him before when he turned back. His eyes were no longer fixed only on me in the yard. For the first time after breaking up, I strongly realized that I didn't love him anymore. And finally, I completely gave up this love that I had once loved most passionately. I completely gave up the 7 years with him. Jason never showed up again after that. Probably he had figured it out. I finally took a relieved breath after getting out of the life that he had been pestering me in. Ryan was still the same as usual. He didn't miss sending me breakfast, afternoon tea, or showing his daily care. If I had worn high heels and walked around all day the day before, there would be a box of Band-Aids on my desk the next day. If there was a dinner party that I had to attend the day before, he would definitely block the wine for me on that day. He used the excuse that I was allergic to alcohol to block all the wine glasses handed to me. Whenever I attended any occasion with him again, everyone already knew tacitly that I would use tea instead of wine to toast. He seemed to be taking care of me everywhere, but he didn't do anything inappropriate. Just like he said, he wasn't in a hurry at all. Until I was rear-ended on the highway on my way back from a business trip and got into a car accident. Actually, it wasn't serious. There were just some abrasions on my arm and head. The owner of the car that caused the accident was quite reasonable and took full responsibility for my medical expenses. The doctor suggested that I stay in the hospital for observation for one night. I thought that since I had already finished my work anyway, it would be better to be on the safe side. I don't know if it was because I was tired from driving during the day, but I fell asleep early in the evening. I didn't even know that my mobile phone had run out of battery and turned off. When I woke up and turned on my phone the next day, there were dozens of missed calls from Ryan. I carefully called back, and it was picked up almost instantly. "Where are you?" His tone was extremely urgent. I honestly told him the name of the hospital and the room number. In less than half an hour, he appeared in front of my hospital bed. I even suspected that he had run all the way here. Otherwise, how could he be breathing so heavily? "Where are you hurt?" I pointed to my arm and forehead. "Are you okay in other places?" I shook my head again. After confirming that I was okay, his expression seemed to change in an instant. His eyes were full of seriousness. "Why didn't you answer my calls? Why didn't you even know that your phone was turned off? Do you know how worried I was? Do you know that I couldn't find you?" I was stunned by his series of questions. He seemed to be angry. It seemed that it was the first time I had seen him lose his temper since I got to know him. Was it because he was worried about me? I said a bit guiltily, "I'm okay." "What if you're okay this time but something happens next time? Why didn't you tell me?" It was a bit rare to see him frowning like this, and I couldn't help laughing. "You're still laughing?" He stared at me in disbelief, his eyes wide open. "Do you need to get hurt really badly to learn a lesson?" Yes, he was worried about me. I was so sure of it. I saw a unique affection for me in his eyes. Such a mature and steady person like him would also be in a flurry over a trifle about me. He would rush towards me regardless of everything. I pretended that my wound hurt and hissed softly. He immediately reacted and quickly walked to my side, his face full of worry, and asked in a low voice where it hurt. I looked up and found that the sunlight outside was blocked and a cool breeze blew in. I said, "Ryan, I'm okay." The movement of his hands froze and he stood there stunned. From the first day he saw me in the studio, he had asked me not to call him senior. But I didn't listen. The primary way for me to keep my distance was not to use too intimate addresses. I was with Jason for 7 years, and he also tried to get me to call him hubby. I didn't agree. In my opinion, before getting the marriage certificate, that address didn't belong to anyone, and after breaking up with him, the address changed from baby to Jason. Even though Ryan had shown his feelings to me, I still called him senior or boss. But it seemed that he really liked me. It was time for me to have a new life. It was time to accept a new person into my life. Starting with this address, I said goodbye to my 7 years.